BBC Question Time Live: should cannabis be legalized for recreational use? Guests on the program this week include the politicians Damian Green, Jon Ashworth and the Chairman of Wetherspoons, Tim Martin. Topics likely to be discussed on the show this week include Trump's immigration policy, Theresa May's extra funding for the NHS and the scandal surrounding the deaths of patients at Gosport War Memorial Hospital. Earlier this week it was also announced David Dimbleby would be stepping down from his role as chair of the program later this year. It is likely some panelists will pay tribute to the veteran broadcaster. 23:55, that is all for tonight. 23:53, the Labour MP makes sure he tells the audience it was one Conservative MP who blocked the act. 23:50, the two women on the panel are in disagreement over the debate. Tim Martin says he has nothing he can add to the argument after the pair go head-to-head in an intense argument. 23:47, yes and it is, says Damian Green. Mr. Green says, it needs to be stopped, it has to be stopped. 23:48, another question has been asked. A member of the audience says, with the motion to ban upskirting blocked, should the government be doing more to prevent sexual harassment? 23:46, we need a Donald Trump in the UK. A member of the audience says we need a Donald Trump in the UK. 23:44, no matter what Donald Trump can does, the UK will always welcome him. Afua Hirsch says she has no confidence in the British government. Sky's former social affairs and education editor says, if we can't take a stand on this, I'm afraid I have no confidence that we are able to take a stand on anything. 23:41, a member of the audience does not know who the president of France is. A member of the audience says Trump turns his back on people as soon as he meets them but is not sure of the Mr. Macron's name. 23:29, the Labour MP says Donald Trump is disgusting. Ironically, Damian Green agrees with the far-left politician but says it is his policy that is disgusting, not the president. 23:37, Tim Martin says Donald Trump is a weird guy. Donald Trump should be welcomed, says Mr. Martin. 23:36, another question has been asked. A member of the audience says, after the recent images of children being caged in the U.S., is it right we are rolling out the red carpet for Donald Trump? 23:33, Damian Green and Jon Ashworth are finally in agreement. 23:29, Damian Green can fund the NHS by legalizing cannabis, says an audience member. Mr. Green is split over the argument. The Tory says, the odd joint did not do people back in the 1960s any harm, says Mr. Green, but continues to add it will not be the middle-class students at university who will be hooked. 23:28, Tim Martin fires back and says no. Mr. Martin says we should not legalize the drug. The government must be very careful on the question of legalizing recreational cannabis use. 23:26, Ella Whelan says yes. The journalist says that recreational cannabis use should be legalized and people's choices should not be determined by the state. 23:25, another question has been asked. A member of the audience says, should cannabis be legalized for recreational use? 23:24, Tim Martin to the rescue for politicians. The pub chain chairman believes we should look abroad as he reiterates his point. 23:22, why has the NHS become a political football? A member of the audience says we should all pay the burden. Another audience member slams the two ministers and says she could do a better job herself as the pair continue to go tit for tat. 23:20, David Dimbleby embarrasses the Labour MP for not answering the question properly. Mr. Ashworth is playing with number, which annoys journalist Ella Whelan. 23:17, Aqua Hirsch says that multiple problems created by long-term austerity has increased the funding squeeze on the NHS. There is a huge strain on our public services. Neither party has the answer according to Ms. Hirsch. 23:16, Tim Martin says we should look at other countries' healthcare. The Brexiteer admits the NHS is struggling. 23:12, a member of the audience blasts Labour MP Jon Ashworth. A member of the audience has rubbished the Labour MP, saying his party would do the exact same but on a much bigger scale. 23:09, a woman in the audience says people are deluded by this. There has been a fiery debate between members of the audience. One member has said that to relate the NHS to the Brexit dividend is a flat-out lie. 23:07, There is no Brexit dividend in my view, says Aqua Hirsch 2305. Damian Green slams Jon Ashworth for interrupting his point. Damian Green says everyone will pay the burden. The Tory continues to say this is the best thing that has happened to the NHS in years. 2303. We need to get back to what the NHS needs. Ella Whelan says we cannot keep flinging money at the NHS. Does not. 2301. Tim Martin fires back. We immediately save $10 billion a year, says the arch-Brexiteer, but everyone will have to pay a little bit more for Brexit. 2259. Jon Ashworth is first to voice his opinion. The Labour MP says Theresa May should have been straight with people over her plans for funding the NHS. The Labour MP wishes Theresa May would have been more honest with the British people. The Tories are waiting until they push the NHS till the absolute brink, according to Jon Ashworth. 2247, and we're off. BBC Question Time has begun. The first question has been asked. A member of the audience said, if the so-called Brexit dividend should not materialise, who should bear the burden to tax for greater NHS funding? This follows on from Theresa May's comments earlier this week when the Prime Minister said, there will be money that we are no longer sending to the EU that we will be able to spend on our NHS. Who is Damian Green? Conservative MP for Ashford since 1997, Damian Green is an old friend of Theresa May's after they attended university together. He was the Conservative First Secretary of State until he was sacked in December 2017. He has formerly also held the Work and Pensions Brief. Who is Aqua Hirsch? Journalist and author Aqua Hirsch is making her first appearances on Question Time tonight. She was formerly Sky's social affairs and education editor. Who is Tim Martin? The successful businessman is the founder of the popular food chain, Wetherspoons. Tim Martin has been a long-term vocal supporter of Brexit and campaigned heavily during the referendum. He has announced his pubs are withdrawing champagne in favor of English sparkling wine. Who is Ella Whelan? Ella Whelan is a journalist who has a column for Spiked magazine and has also written for The Spectator and City AM. The columnist has written a book calling for an end to feminism. Who is Jon Ashworth? Jon Ashworth is Labour's Shadow Health Secretary and was Deputy Chair of the party under Ed Miliband's leadership. He also previously worked as an advisor to Jon Ashworth.